only ends once
Anything that happens before that?
is progress. It's kind of been a life motto for me. And today I'm starting something new. So since it's not ending, it's definitely progress. Back in the 90s, I grew up in Phoenix, and our world kind of changed as a community when one man came to town. In 1993, the Phoenix Suns traded for Charles Barkley, the round mound of rebound, and in a way that I would argue and fight with anybody who dared to disagree, transformed our community more than anyone else. We got a swagger that our city had never had before. And all of a sudden, we went from a community that would always be second rate at best to one that could compete with the big boys. And at that time, the big boys were the Chicago Bulls that already won 2 championships with Jordan and Pippen and all those guys. And they were going for their third. But this time, Charles Barkley won the MVP of the NBA. And the Phoenix Suns had the best record in the NBA. And the collision course that they were on in the NBA Finals coincided with my very formative 13-year-old birthday. And there's something interesting about the things that you get into and get excited about and passionate about when you're 13, and how much those will shape your next 5 years and 10 years and the different iterations of what you care about at that time. On that day, I actually missed it because the only thing that was more important for me at that time than the Phoenix Suns was church for some reason. I was at a church camp, and this is obviously a pre-internet time, and so we had to hear through somebody relaying the score to us over the phone that in fact the Suns' dream did come to an end on that fateful June 1993 day. But it was also true that church would remain to be the most interesting and important thing for my life moving forward. And in the coming years, I began to take that aspect of my life more and more seriously, and not just the idea of church as a social place where I could make friends and meet girls and sort of differentiate from my parents in that way that is important for a teenager to do, but more in the sense of I believed what I was learning about. I believed that these were the most important things to be considering, and that there was something like wisdom that could be gained from changing your life to correspond with the beliefs and the theology of the people that made church the most important part of their life. And that began my journey towards the church. Now I find myself at the age of 43, 30 years later, somewhat outside of the church. And I say somewhat because I don't exactly know what the church means anymore. The boundaries between what is church and what isn't church have gotten kind of blurry for me. And I still find myself drawn to those who consider themselves part of the church, though I wouldn't identify myself as a member of a church or even believing in God and Jesus and calling myself a Christian. And yet, because I'm drawn back to these people and these concepts and not towards anything else as strongly, I want to figure out what that means. I want to understand why my kids, who are now all teenagers themselves, have been drawn into this same church and look kind of sideways at me and don't understand why I don't see things the way that they do. Maybe somewhat similarly to how I looked at my parents at that age, if I think about it. So that's my project, figuring out where the church sort of fits into my life and what any of this means.